Hello, good morning, and welcome to today's webinar. We're excited to talk about identity assurance and addressing the Achilles heel of multi-factor authentication. We'll get into that and much more today. I'm Derek Topp. I'm the research director with Opus Research, and yeah, we're looking forward to a lively discussion today, looking at like how voice biometrics and identity assurance is improving approaches to multi-factor authentication, especially how it helps businesses build trust with their agents, with their employees, and also build better customer experiences. So we're excited to have ValidSoft here. Joe O'Donnell's with us, and we'll do some intros here in a second. But before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. This is a live interactive webinar, so we do encourage all of you listening in to engage with us, to ask questions, make comments. This is meant to be conversational, so we do have a planned Q&A at the end as well. But we're also happy to answer questions throughout the entire throughout the discussion. So what you'll do is there's an ask a question button. I think it's below the viewer screen here. Type in your questions, type in your comments, and we'll engage you as part of the webinar. So with that, I'm going to actually go on video here. Hello. We're going to introduce ourselves, and then we'll get into the agenda and today's discussion. So real quick, just I'm Derek Topp. I'm the research director and senior analyst with Opus Research, and as many of you know, Opus is a third-party analyst firm. We cover what we like to call broad topics around conversational technologies, including intelligent assistance, conversational intelligence, and for the purposes of this discussion, intelligent authentication. And we produce reports, webinars like this, and lots of other things. We're also an advisory service. So please reach out if you have questions. And with that, I'll pass it over to Dan Miller.
Well, thanks. Boy, when the video comes on, I'm always surprised. So
I know.
it's good to see everybody. So I'm Dan Miller. I'm the lead analyst and actually founder of Opus Research. And as such, we've been around since 1985, 86, but right around 2003, we started covering voice biometrics. Voice biometrics as essentially a mechanism for authenticating people over the phone. And over that time, I think we've met just about every solution provider out there, and ValidSoft has always stood out. Just with sort of a forward-looking approach, one that's oriented towards privacy. I know this isn't an ad, and we have some substantive stuff to talk about, but I think my point is, and I'll throw it over to Joe to talk a little bit about it. But the this idea of identity assurance is something that I think we all uncovered, going back 12 years and have seen sort of evolve. And that's sort of the topic here, what its relevance is now, how things have changed. And with that, I'll turn it over to Joe to give some bona fides, and then we're going to get into some pretty substantive discussions. I might have made up a word. Substantive.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it. Joe O'Donnell here, Chief Growth Officer for ValidSoft. Growth to us just means big levers in the channel, OEMs, alliances, and things like that can help the business grow, as well as it gives us a great voice of the community and the narrative. It keeps us really close to that to build on everything Dan just said. Been doing this for about 30 years, started out in voice over IP, actually pulling cable and installing phone systems, and now as a cybersecurity executive. Our mission is literally to invert identity, right? Up to now, biometrics have been cute. They haven't been fast. They haven't been accurate. They've been funky to use. And they've been kind of third, fourth class citizen to proxy factors, right? Possession and things like that. So our mission is to flip that on its head. Pandemic digitalization has accelerated that need because now there's an interest in identity guarantee versus assurance. That is the human being that they say they are, not what their device says they are, but that is that human being that she or he says they are. And there's many different business outcomes that we'll talk about here with Dan and Derek today. So thanks for having us. Really appreciate it.
No problem. So once these slides appear, you'll see. So here's our agenda. I've already introduced Opus Research. Joe introduced ValidSoft, but what we're here to talk about today is just the things we've seen evolve over the past, let's say 5 years or so. When Opus started out, covering voice biometrics, like I said, it was a mechanism for authenticating people over the phone, usually landlines, in contact centers. But these days, what we're really talking about is what Opus calls intelligent authentication. And it's the fact that things like the same things that make intelligent assistants smart, the deep neural networking, the pattern detection, all that sort of stuff, can be implemented across multiple channels in multiple situations, and that it's filling a role of not just authentication, we'll get to the next step, but authentication and fraud detection. I'll turn it over a little bit. We used identity assurance in the title here. It's a term of art that evolved as having strong confidence that an individual is whom he or she claimed to be. But I think, as we're going to learn, it's crossed a river or whatever into, especially with solution providers like ValidSoft, where you're not just assuring individual, ensuring a company that the individual is whom he or she claims to be, but vice versa. But you can almost guarantee it, and we'll talk about that, and then what it leads to in terms of applications with an impact on customer experience, with an impact on all employees, but primarily contact center agent experience. And the latest dimension, because one of the things we see, and I brought us up on the side here, is that business process outsourcers are taking an increasingly important role in making all of the technologies that need to mesh together work. And something like the solutions we're talking about today become very important for them as well. Any comment, Joe?
Yeah, I'll nail the one on the BPO piece. What I'm seeing globally is a propensity not just to take a step up authentication method such as us, but using something that is omni-channel, passwordless, and really easy to use, like voice is imperceptible. These BPOs are doing it anyway. They're on the phone talking. And so what we're seeing is a lot of opportunities where not only like a sell to opportunity, but more along the lines of a competitive advantage opportunity, that they're taking it around, instead of being just a super agent, right? Where there's several definitions of super agent, right? Some software UCaaS vendors say super agent is a agent assist piece of software, and that's true. And then others in the BPO, they have accreditation programs where it's a series of educational steps that makes that agent super, right? And so how can they be super if they're not trusted, right? If they're not verified continuously that that agent is who she or he says they are. And they're turning that around and making it a competitive advantage against other BPOs. So we're seeing that dynamic in the marketplace, Dan.
And we should clarify a little here, because guilty is charged, 3-letter abbreviation, BPO, business process outsourcer. For some people, that's like almost any third party that comes in and helps automate things for you, or brings additional bodies to augment companies' employees. In the e-commerce and contact center world, there were particular ones that automated call handling, that brought more bodies to handle things during overflow periods. But in the world of omni-channel commerce, it's just there's just a wide world of opportunity, and just wanted to make sure for everybody attending that we weren't not defining a TLA.
Good save, Dan. Thanks.
Yeah, exactly. Now we know.
Okay. So, when we talk about identity assurance, I thought we'd drill a little down in, what it is, but also why it's taken on increased importance now. And I'm not into reading slides, so I'm going to just sort of zip through this really fast. There's been a heavy impact, especially during the lockdown, on the gig economy. There's not just BPOs that are people that are doing work for companies. It could be all of their employees. So there's a lot of work from home, anywhere, anytime. Another issue, and Joe, you brought this up on our planning call yesterday. It's like, really, when you think about it, everybody's a contact center agent, I mean, all rational companies these days should think of all of their employees as as bringing the greatest benefit when they're doing customer facing. And then the third thing that I think we need to talk about is we're entering an era of, quote, zero trust.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'll lean on you a little bit for all three here.
Sure. Work from home anywhere. The one thing that we often get hit up for is that there's employees by the thousands or hundreds of thousands that have never met their supervisor, right? I mean, literally, and they might have gone through the HR process, they might have been onboarded in some authentication program, what have you, and they've never really shaken anybody's hand. We're seeing a very interesting complement to the MFA market in enrollment, right, which is typically the weakest component of authentication, is when people are getting onboarded, because you have to get it right the first time. And so we're seeing that added, we want this quote unquote identity guarantee throughout the whole process, that it is Joe. And again, the pandemic unfortunately spawned a lot of that, but we're seeing a lot of post-pandemic, depending on whatever your thought process is on the pandemic, if it's over or not, we're seeing that it's not going away, right? There's a lot of value that people got out of it. So that's kind of in concert with everybody's become a contact center agent, doctors, nurses, teachers, politicians, salespeople, right? We're, inside sales has most likely been, call center like for a long time, but really a lot of different professions have become, a victim of, a victim of the microphone on the ear and some sort of call center suite. As for zero trust, I mean, you see a lot of vendors, and rightfully so, talk about, cyber's about humans and things like that. Well, how can you have zero trust, least privilege, defense in depth if you're not sure that that's actually human at the end of those proxy factors and or devices, what have you? So we're just adding that layer to that, and again, trying to raise, voice biometrics based on many different items, that it's mathematically superior, it's multimodal or omni-channel, and it's multidimensional, both behavior and physical. By just talking, we're trying to elevate the presence of that factor in identity, assurance, as well as identity guarantee, and we're finding really good success at that.
Yeah, and just to clarify a little bit more about zero trust, one of the sets of use cases we're seeing is where in the contact center, once again, a lot of the sales of solutions had been to high volume, high value sort of interactions and transactions. As voice biometrics, among other intelligent authentication mechanisms, expand, they're going to move down market. There's going to be applications that are not high volume. And this sort of addresses, if you engineer things with zero trust, here's somebody I haven't encountered. We're hearing more and more questions about, hey, what solutions attack that particular issue? And I think, we're finding that, solutions like yours are orchestrated to do the right thing with these people. But it does get to this idea that biometrics are not just sort of a nice to have add-on layer, but as you do this, they are indeed a must. And we're seeing specifically in the work from home, work anywhere applications where part of the onboarding process is to enroll face or voice and face and other behavioral, I found our first typo, traits, not trains. And then there's once enrolled, we've seen chicanery of the work from home people where somebody might log in at the beginning of the shift and then leave for their next job. So right. you want to sort of know who's there. So that's part of a solution that is continuous and sort of addresses that human nature of trying to do all you can to have as many jobs as possible generating revenue and not always being honest about it.
Yeah, Dan, you know what's really interesting on that, to that point, you know, we've gotten out of self-proclamation around, you know, our implementation of voice biometric is X, Y, and Z. We're seeing a really good partnership uptake from the top MFA players right now, where we're a primary or secondary IDP, identity provider, for them. Name the top 5, and we're partnered with them. So there's no real, I mean, the headwinds are kind of letting up, right? Because we've developed something that is faster, more accurate, multimodal, omni-channel, what have you, and it complements their passwordless push, because your voice or your voice print is now your password, and it's only good for you, right? It's data points. They're encrypted in a one-way hash to a database that means nothing to anybody. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. It has no use unless I'm comparing one-to-one. And so that speed and accuracy really complements the existing MFA players. So we're getting zero friction from that community. Actually, the uptake's been pretty cool.
Yeah,
and here again. Go ahead.
Sorry, I mean, like, let's amplify it in some of the research we've done too. We did a survey earlier in the year about intelligent authentication and fraud prevention, and really, yeah, there is a strong uptake around biometrics. I mean, certainly possession and knowledge, you know, those types of typical identity and authentication factors are being used by the vast majority of enterprises out there. But there is a growing interest in biometrics, voice having its specific traits that are helpful. We also have seen growth in behavioral and network authentication as well. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that point. Yeah. And with the whole point being that this is it's a business value, right? And so like why is that? I think, and as we move to the next slide, I don't know, Dan, as far as
well, I do think
go ahead. Yeah.
MFA, another TLA. We're talking multi-factor authentication. I know that, you know, a lot of people use it every day, and often they'll get solicitations from their banks or their mobile providers to add a second factor. So you often see 2FA, which I would argue is kind of weird. The text messaging a number to you that you can put in because you know it is a little weird. So there are among providers of multi-factor authentication, the recognition that a biometric solves a lot of problems that are created by, you know, sort of going that simple route, which has been around, which said, hey, I need to get rid of passwords, nobody remembers them, to then texting them short codes, which, hey, works around. But it does get to, before we go to the next slide, the you know, that we have crossed a chasm of sorts, you know, from this identity assurance to you know, you're willing to make the bold step of you know, guaranteed identity. And I think I'd like, you know, Joe to put a little color on that as well.
Sure, because there's a couple things, right? So you've got factors of authentication that are useful. You know, you've got a lot of things from proxy and location, all kinds of different possession factors that are very useful. On top of that, providing, you know, a layer of human identity, a proof of life, liveliness, whatever you want to call it, really allows us to take the next step to say, yes, it's the underlying factors can be spoofed, stolen, and sold, right? Adding on the fact that we're identifying an exact human being, right? What we'll do is we'll grab, you know, and we're getting the distortion out of the human body, which is different by every human. Might sound, you and I might sound alike, my brother and I might sound alike, but to a mathematical equation, we're totally different because it's above and beyond the hearing range of the human being. So we're capturing that picture, so to speak, and we're taking that back in secure means. And really, you can't use it for anything else than a one-to-one comparison. Even if you knew where that was, there was nothing you can really do with it. So combined with the underlying factors, combined with a biometric such as voice, which again is mathematically superior, multimodal, yada, 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 it really allows us to go for that bold claim. And it's trying to spoof that or trying to, you know, fake that. It used to be one of the reasons why people didn't buy it. But now the chance of that, I won't do the math for you here today, but we can take it offline. But the mathematical probabilities of getting it wrong versus getting it right really favor the defenders. And what we're really trying to do is advance the security maturity models of customers or security postures, whatever, add to their defense in depth, add to their zero trust, add to their least privilege things. And we're finding a really good uptake with that, just alone with voice biometrics, but on top of a solid multi-factor authentication deployment, you can get now the confidence and start talking guarantees versus assurance.
Mm-hmm.
And that segues nicely into the slide that I accidentally brought up in the middle of your talk, but it does tie directly to certain business outcomes. And I can let you march through these because I was just taking notes when we were rehearsing yesterday.
There's a couple that we talked a little about proof of employment. We kind of beat that one up. Pretty common sense, right? That it could add to your process of some sort of identity program that you have underway. The big one for me, especially in the contact center and in the great resignation period, being an agent's tough, right? It's an oxymoron, right? You're supposed to delight people, right? But yet you end up playing cyber cop and you interrogate them for 3 to 6 minutes on things like that, right? And so it's not a fair fight making call center agents the first line of cyber defense. Many of these breaches of late, as well as in the past, start with impostoring. They start with social engineering. They start with deepfakes, and then they move into the traditional, attack cycle or kill chain, whatever you want to use. If we can help those agents out, right? Because it's not really a fair fight against nation states, machines, hackers, groups, and things like that. They're supposed to balance delighting a customer from customer sat and protecting, the threat surface, which I think the numbers between 60 and 70% of breaches in the enterprise begin with social engineering and impostoring in a contact center, right? So again, not a fair fight. And why would I want to keep that job, right? It's just such an oxymoron. So if we could add to the vendors, agent assist, super agent programs, why not, right? Because we'll give them a fighting chance where we're going to do the dirty work to make sure that inbound caller is who she or he says they are. We'll also do the compliance checks box that agent is continuously authenticated. So the corporation that hired that business process outsourcer agent can check that box, but literally allow them to do their job and be happy about doing their job versus, losing an agent after agent. Because if you've got someone on a Genesis call center, right, that knows healthcare really well as an outsourcer, that's a competitive advantage for that process outsourcer. You don't want to lose her or him, right? And so we're trying to add to that whole agent assist flair by adding a cyber assist to the agents based on the fact that it's very fragile. Their employment's very fragile. They can go anywhere in a phone call. And we can also enforce the fact that they can be super agents because they're trusted agents, right? I don't think you can be super if you're not trusted. So sorry, I get a little bit bent around the retention axle, but we run into that a lot, and we think we have a lot of value for that individual that is making money for the outsourcer and or the company.
Right, and from the business point of view or the bottom line point of view, the cost of agent churn is huge. And the idea, and what you were just saying is that asking them to do mundane, awful things like authenticate has been documented to be unpleasant and at least part of a cause of job dissatisfaction. So there's retention of the agent related directly to improving these seamless authentication methods. The other thing that we talked a little bit about, so that's the mating of .2 retention with .3 creation of super agents. But the other aspect of retention is customer experience, and the flip side being the marketing costs that are associated if you've lost a customer and you have to regain or get new customers. It's the same sort of things, and there's probably equally valid sets of data that would show that an unpleasant authentication experience, a false rejection, those sorts of things have a direct negative impact on customer experience, which here again impacts the bottom line as well. And then we had already talked a bit about the competitive advantage for the business process outsourcers, so we can probably eschew that. So moving on to the next one, I feel like the visions of the future get more and more vivid when we find we Opus find these solutions that are bringing together MFA, that are applying voice biometrics in a way that takes a leap in terms of the frequently asked questions about accuracy and efficacy and that sort of thing. But yesterday you brought up a couple of things that I think deserve a deeper dive by you. This is transparency, and also the word that you brought up on the last slide, which is, hey, trust. So, maybe chat a little bit about, how Opus called it, sort of seamless and friction-free. I like the idea of transparent, but I'd like to hear how you describe that.
Yeah. So, as we're already experiencing right now with, IVAs, the interactive voice assistants and bots and things like that a lot of people are speaking into microphones, and at the other end, it's coming out with something different. Their eyes are, obscured. They're an avatar. There's something that they're not. Their faces aren't the same. And what we're finding is there's continuity in the human voice, right? Because it's in a microphone, whether it's in-app, whether it's browser, whether it's in a phone, what have you. The ingress point for the voice is a point of capture where you can literally create a print, and then at some day or at some future day, you can compare against that print. It's very difficult, almost impossible with the way things are going to 3.0 and everything like that people aren't necessarily who they say they are, or they don't appear who they are, but you can get the biometric from the spoken voice. And we're seeing a lot of conversations in what we call meta voice, which is our trademark, around as we move into 3.0 and decentralized autonomous organizations and different chat groups and things like that there's a distillation and a common ground where voice is very useful in the identification process, unlike other biometrics and unlike other compute factors, which can be and are by its very nature altered. And so a lot of emphasis on that in the company and in the marketplace on how do we create some sort of identity assurance. And it's not just us, it's the whole market is perplexed by this, because if you look at it, it's pretty scary, right? The movies are coming true. So
yeah, it's been true for a while.
Right. But how do we do it in a way where we can rely on a biometric and or some other factors, and how can people use it in an imperceptible fashion? Right, without having to go to a key, go to and one-time password, put these knowledge-based factors in, go back to a key to get like 8 different steps of authentication. People just won't use it. And unused security is the worst security. So our goal is to make it imperceptible so people can actually use it and still get that omni-channel stepped up feeling.
Right. Yeah, I think, and that we didn't mention it here, but that ties directly into what we talk about when we talk about the conversational cloud, in terms of having these self-service, these kind of different channels, the omni-channel approach that come in. Doesn't matter how the customer gets to the enterprise or gets to the brand, through voice or through assistant. Having that level of authentication that creates a personalized, secure experience that can then that conversational cloud infrastructure includes tapping into CRMs and really kind of like back end knowledge, and like kind of creating having that seamless experience of I am here calling about my cable order or my package or whatever, and that's all authenticated within that experience. Just it reinforces the same business impact we just talked about from both the agent standpoint and also from just a customer standpoint. Knowing that I'm getting what I need to get done is truly a big part of authentication in the conversational cloud.
And I went a different direction with the meta, thinking Web3, thinking of virtual worlds. And the idea that we've been totally preoccupied with security. When you think of sort of an environment where individuals are encountering each other without meeting, that's what a call to a contact center had been. But in a virtual world, you sort of want to have confidence that the individuals you're interacting with are the people that they claim to be. So it's establishing trust in a world where we're distanced, but virtually together, and that's what gets kind of interesting, especially as you move to sort of the trust comment here, that hey, here's a technology that's helping me be me and do the things I want to do. There's going to be increased exposure to the fact that some of these people are fake by design. They're, they're the robots,
Yeah.
and that, what's needed is this technology with persistence. So
yeah, Dan, to dogpile on that is that it allows the service providers of these services to create service level agreements, right? Like say there might be a social or some decentralized site or group that they want to cater to children, right? But right now they can't, because there's adults pretending to be children, and vice versa, right? So they can create different service level agreements to say, based on some truthful biometric, that, okay, they can securely create this thing. Different lines of business possibly, right? You look at Twitter wanting to get rid of bots, right? All those things you can kind of steer things with the technology. And then the whole voice commerce component, we can probably have a whole separate session on that. But,
absolutely.
People working with IVAs and intelligent voice assistants, putting things in their shopping cart and all these things, and it's not me, it's somebody else. So there's all kinds of different things that are both exciting and scary as we move to the next horizon of this stuff.
And we asked for it. There are Q&A. Actually, I want to cut to the chase here. It said, can you help me understand what is meant by meta voice? This is a great opening here.
I'll jump on that. So basically, we had the forethought of looking out and saying, there are different types of communications in the metaverse, if you will, right? There are avatars, there are texting, there is typing. But the one thing that is in there, whether it be virtually real or not, is there is a voice component of things. So we categorize that as meta voice, and we'll build applications and use cases around whether you call it 3.0, whether you call it decentralized stuff, voice commerce. You guys
or DOA.
Cloud. I mean, you guys are well ahead. That's what we've kind of taken a shine to you all, is because you're well ahead of all the other analysts around, deeming this thing as conversational cloud, which is happening right now. I consider that part of meta voice as well. So looking at all these different communication methods that are changing so rapidly based on digitalization, how do we create security mechanisms that improves postures, maybe create new lines of business and accelerate commerce? That's what we mean by meta voice. It'll have a big impact as a attribute of the metaverse.
Love it. It is the voice. It's the role of voice in the metaverse, and the metaverse is sort of self-defining or differs depending on who you talk to. And what's neat is voice will turn out to be universal, just as it is in real life, IRL. And it's important to have this concept of not just that, hey, it's what you say and the meaning of what you say. It's a big identifier as well. So
see, Dan can even drop 3-letter acronyms.
He can, exactly.
Just dropped one right there.
I can see him texting that to his daughter or something like that. Yeah.
To my dog.
Yeah. How do you know it's your dog? Yeah.
So, and speaking of,
we had a couple of comments. I don't know, Dan, if you wanted to talk about those. I thought you were gonna.
I wanted to go right to that. Well, in the interest of time, I cut to the big question. But so we do have the evergreen question we get asked. Whether it's meta voice or whether it's your voice brand or whatever. Is it PII, and is there PII? Did it again? Personally identifiable information that has become the crux of sort of, or the bane of many companies that are investigating whether they want to include voice biometrics in their authentication or customer experience strategy. What are your thoughts there?
It's near and dear to our hearts. We've looked at the landscape, right, building it out with privacy in mind, and people talk a good game around that, but they tend to hook the audio, keep the audio, store the audio, and guess what? They're in court, right? So, right, and again, no one, whether, I don't think anybody's maliciously doing anything, but the fact that you need to innovate and build a technology based on your specialty around taking what you need from a minimal perspective. Again, we're not a voice recording system, right? We're not a dictation system. We're not a system of record. We're a security tool, and we need X, Y, and Z, and we get out, right? So hook the audio, take what you need, discard the audio, don't transport it, don't don't store it, don't encrypt it. We get what we need, we get out. And that's why we advocate a lot of privacy programs, and we can get teams that have projects underway through that rigor based on the techniques that we use. We're authenticating and verifying, right? Yes, we can route smartly. Yes, we can deflect to, other technologies, no doubt about it. But we're not maintaining the audio as a system of record, which allows us to claim, privacy, if you will. We've got a lot of things for the European privacy seals to back that up. And if you implement the solution set based on our methodologies, the customer or partner get to escrow those seals in their implementation. So there's a lot of ways to do it. I think a lot of people are a victim of where they begin, right? We're a victim of being a security tool, so we can move quickly. Others started out as a voice tool, and then they have to kind of create a way to get PII or privacy into their DNA by either building something or acquiring something.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. Good. Well, I think we're up on time here. So we had a couple comments that came in. Really appreciate those, and we can kind of keep conversation going after in our various social channels. So, but yeah, we do want to wrap up here, and I want to thank Joe and Dan and definitely all of you that were listening in for today. If you have any questions, that QR code did come up. If you're able chance to zap that, you'll get more information about ValidSoft. And of course, feel free to reach out to any of us here at Opus to learn more. So with that, thanks everyone.
Yeah,
Dan, thanks.
you.
And
This was
Derek,
great.
thanks to the entire ValidSoft team. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Cheers.